Okay, Dallas, we're live. I'm going to set you as a moderator, Dallas. Uh, I assume we got 22 people on here. Thanks for tuning in. Why didn't would somebody chat? Why doesn't somebody go ahead and chat in just to make sure we're connected? Haven't done one of these in a while, but the format of today is I'm here to answer just any and all tropical saltwater fishing questions that I can. I want to see you make the absolute most out of your trips, gear investments, make the most out of your time, etc. So that's kind of the format. So, all right, looks like we're chatting in just fine. So, um, probably ramble for just another moment here or two, and I have a handful of things I'm going to run through. I've got some of my favorite saltwater flies that I'll share today. But more than anything, we just want to have like engaging discussion on things that you guys want to know about. So, Uh, I am upstairs in the office at Red's Fly Shop. So right through the window, I guess to be on that side, straight through there behind me is the shop floor, and this is where this is where we shuffle our paperwork and do the business end of things at Red's, and so that's where we're coming live from today. So for those that I don't know personally, most of you have probably seen me on the YouTube channel. I'm one of the partners here at Reds and working all facets of the business. I guide, I teach, and one thing that I do and have done for the last 15 years is coordinate and host tropical saltwater fishing trips. And I take it very seriously in helping people plan saltwater fishing trips. I didn't grow up with even the idea of getting on an airplane to go fishing would not have been something up until I was in my late 20s or 30 that I would have 30s I would have ever even thought was a thing that people do. I grew up in kind of a very sheltered fishing background and took my first saltwater trip, I think, at age 30. That was my first real, like, well organized saltwater fishing trip at age 30. It was great, blew my mind, and I was like, man, this is like as close to big game hunting with a fly as I can get. It's high stakes, high reward, lots of high points and low points, and really got hooked on it and have made that part of my career is helping people coordinate these trips. So our gain from it is we take groups to lodges. We get a little commission arrangement from them for marketing a good lodge, hopefully a good week, and then helping run a good trip and making sure the money you spent is well your resources are invested well at those trips, and then people buy some tackle from us. We have a great time doing it, and everybody wins. So we trout fish a lot of the year, but we also do a lot of saltwater fishing. So uh, yeah, so I haven't seen any questions come through yet. So that's kind of our motivation for doing these. We do a tremendous amount of saltwater fishing trips throughout the year. In fact, I think I printed out our huge list of saltwater fishing trips uh, that we have. But I'll start before I start with any specific dates or anything like that. We do a lot of trips to Ascension Bay, Mexico. Been to Cuba, Belize, many, many, many trips to Baja, Mexico, Christmas Island as well. I've been to Costa Rica a couple of times. I've been to Florida several times. So tremendous amount of saltwater fishing experience to draw on, and have definitely made plenty of mistakes, on those trips. And then also hearing the echoes back from customers that have had similar experiences on trips. We want to help troubleshoot trips for folks. But I haven't seen any questions come in. So anybody who's on there that wants specific things, you know, tackled today. I mean, it's the format of the day is that we're going to do Q&A. But I did get a couple of emailed in from a customer, but we really want to see them just come through in the live chat as well. So the first question I had that got emailed in was, is it realistic for a salt novice uh, to have to reach the goal of catching a permit on an Ascension Bay trip. And that's really true of any permit trip that you go on. I mean, permit are one of these fascinating fish, and I'm gonna jump and do a few. I'm gonna do a few screen shares from time to time because I think it's a really easy way to show people certain things. So, if we're going to talk about a particular species of fish or a fly or a destination, uh, I'll probably bring up uh, I'll probably bring up some pictures of fish or whatever it happens to be uh, in the background. So I think I'm sharing that right now. And there's a picture of a permit from Ascension Bay. Pretty good size permit. Ascension Bay has absolutely spectacular permit fishing. But permit, they have big eyes. They can be really, really spooky. They can be very, very, very challenging in order to catch the permit. So, but it can be really easy too. I mean, I've been to Ascension Bay 10 times and I've seen first time saltwater anglers just show up there and they get the right fish in the right spot. They throw a 30 footer and that crab lands, tumbles down in front of them and the fish eats. So I've seen lots of salt novice anglers do really well. The other thing just about saltwater fishing in general is like people treat it as some kind of like daunting fishing adventure that only the elite, the Navy SEALs of fly fishing are going to succeed. And that's so untrue. There are folks that do a hell of a lot of saltwater fishing that frankly aren't that good at it. And they'll self admit they're not that good at it. They just really enjoy going to the tropics and combining like a vacation where they get to blow off some steam and hang out with great people and experience another culture and eat, great food and be in the sun, but they're not that good a fisherman. Inversely, there are trout fishermen that you could take from this river right here and drop them in a saltwater fishing environment and they're going to excel just based on their casting expertise, their mastery of laying out a fly, and kind of these innate hunting instincts that they have. They know when to shoot, when not to shoot, etc. So I don't want people to feel like they're a salt novice just because they haven't saltwater fished before. I mean, they might be an intermediate level saltwater angler just because they can cast a weighted fly in a streamer dead ass accurate to 60 feet. So there's a lot more to it than just saltwater experience. And there's different layers. I mean, there's seeing fish and et cetera. The more trips you've done, the more experience and mistakes you've probably made. But no, I don't think it's unrealistic for a salt angler to catch permit. I mean, I'd put my money on somebody who's first time in the salt that's got a really good, accurate cast and can listen well and follow some instruction, somebody who just operates really well with a guide saying strip, stop, etc. I don't think that's unrealistic at all. I think it has a lot more to do with just your decision making and your casting ability. Uh, and if we're going to touch on like a species, like we're doing right now, I will probably take that opportunity for if there are beginners in the group and we want like first time anglers to engage with reds for any of this material because we're gonna we're gonna get you educated if you're thinking about doing a salt trip. We don't care if it's with us necessarily. I mean, we'd love it to be on one of our many hosted trips. They're killer. We do a great job on those. But we want to be able to help you. We want to be able to get you flies and that kind of stuff. Selfishly, I mean, we're in the industry of selling you tackle as well. So, you know, pursue with us when you need information about these things. So anyway, if you're new to this type of fishing, I'm going to show you just a permit crab. And I realize these aren't going to be in super duper fine focus, but that is my favorite fly for permit. That's a Casablanca raghead crab in tan. And I believe that is the number 6 in size, but that would be my number one permit crab. Permit will eat oversized and large shrimp, but they're primarily crab feeders. Crabs can be one of the challenges to permit fishing, which Mark, who had the question, pointed out, is they are difficult to catch. They have incredible vision. They're very spooky. And the way crabs eat, they're a very slow moving critter that's typically going down toward the bottom, which if the crab is falling like so, that looks natural. That's what a crab does when it flees, is goes down. What happens, a lot of anglers get excited or they strip too fast. And as soon as that crab goes up, the permit knows it's a fake. And at one point, I had taken 66 consecutive attempts at permit over the course of several trips to Ascension Bay and not had a single single permit eat. And that was when, at one point, when I had a lot more experience. My first trip there, literally my first saltwater trip, I landed three and thought I was God's gift to permit fishing. Well, what goes around comes around. I ended up having some dry spells in there. In the meantime, there were a lot of beginners that were doing really well on permit. So permit can be a very unfair species. I don't spend a lot of my fishing time chasing permit. I think if opportunities there, you have good flats conditions, spending time chasing permit's great. It's a wonderful endeavor, lots of adrenaline, but I wouldn't get too wrapped up in that. Especially if you're newer to saltwater angling, go catch many of the great other species that are there. And my advice is focus far more heavily on bonefish and becoming proficient at seeing and getting like single individual bonefish on one shot. To me, that would be the definition of like a highly competent or highly capable salt angler, is an angler who can spot their own bonefish and make one well thought out, very accurate, surgically delivered shot on a bonefish and get it on the first cast. To me, that stands out as a much more capable or competent angler than somebody who can pitch a crab in front of a hungry permit and get one every several trips. To me, that to me, permit and angling skill don't necessarily correspond in catch rate, so they can be very unfair. But anyway, that's just a bit of background about that. uh, Keep the questions coming. I'm going to get to all of these. I'm not. This is not overwhelming at all. So, but yeah, just keep pumping them full there. Another question that I had emailed in, prior to this, and I just prefer they come in the comments. Don't email me right now because I won't see it. But another question was, is there a list of guide Spanish phrases? And there absolutely is. Yeah, we actually have one on all of our hosted trips that we send out. And a lot of people don't see this because there's a lot of correspondence and it's not. So if you've been on a host trip with the Reds, you're like, hey, Joe, I never got the list of guide Spanish phrases. You got it somewhere. It was emailed out, but it was probably an attachment that you ignored. Uh, but what I'll do is, after this, I'm going to post a blog article on some of the questions. One, if I can't give you a really good answer on a question that you have, or I don't know as particular, or something like this, I'll put a PDF of that Spanish cheat sheet. Steve Joyce is one of my primary partners here at Reds. He hired me, eons ago here at Reds, and he speaks industrious level Spanish. He's pretty good, actually. And he put together a really good list of cheat sheet of common phrases that you'd use in the boat, which I find to be incredibly helpful, especially in Baja and Cuba. In Ascension Bay, like Mexico, they're very good English, relatively good English speaking. At least the senior guides are. In Chile, Argentina, they speak English very well, especially in Chile because they learn English as a second language in primary school. So don't use it much there. But I'll post a PDF of that on a blog article that I will have up later today on the Reds blog. So hit it up there. All right, so let me grab a question here. Yeah, so Fly Guy asked, are there any new Reds group locations in the works? So I listed off a handful of the places that we go and we've done. Yeah, we got a redfish trip going. I think that one kind of got filled up invite only, but we do have space to a trip on a trip to Ishkalak to X Flats coming up. Let me ask the guy behind me here if he's paying attention. Dallas, do we have space on the X Flats trip? What are the dates? He's going to get dates. So Eric Nickham, who normally sits in that desk, runs our travel desk, and Eric just got back from Ishkalak along with several of our other guides, and one of our former guides, Craig Chittenden, that some of you know. He was pretty well known here, one of our top steelhead guides for many years, 10 years. They just went to X Flats, had a really, really great trip. Wasn't over the top crazy good permit fishing, but they did catch a couple of permit. They caught tarpon, bonefish, really well, smoothly run and operated trip. And we will be running trips to X Flats and do have some space. Dallas, what are the dates on that? Oh, Dallas will put it in the comments, and then I'll put those on the blog as well. And I'm going to write that down as well. And I'll put that up on the blog article following this. So, yep, that's X Flats was a great trip. Uh, Super smooth. Fly into Tulum for X Flats. Pick up ground transport in X Flats. Little further south than the famous Ascension Bay. But same general Grand Slam fishery, permit, bonefish, tarpon, snook. But that's the only one we have that's new, and you'll see more dates in 2026 coming for that. Jim Paris asks, casting to lead a fish, how to figure lead distance. Very, very good question. I'll run through, and some of these answers will be pretty brief. I mean, I could go off on a tangent, like talking very detailed about all this. It's certainly going to depend on the species and water depth and a lot of different things. But I'll just give you a few pieces of advice on leading fish. Uh, you know, Permit. I'm looking if I've got a permit that is I feel like I actually have a chance at, meaning it's tailing, wallowing, wandering, and not just floating on a traveling direction. I'm looking to get within 3 feet of that permit. So I'm a couple of body lengths, unless it's got a really good direction. Permit, like my advice on permit is you got to play to win. You're only going to get a couple of shots at permit before they just see leader. Every time your fly enters the water, it's very, very spooky. So I'm like always sub 6 feet on permit. It's just a generalization, generally like body length and a half. So permits yay long. I'm like just gauging. I'm like, okay, body length and a half. I'm with that. I'm looking for the black tips of its tail. It's got a dorsal, it's got a tail. Both of them are going to be angled, and that's going to give me a direction if the fish is turning. And I know that sounds really obvious, but the fish isn't always broadside. So we need to figure out one, which way the fish is facing if the permit is tailing and moving, and it can be very hard on it to gauge the fish's direction of travel when you have really choppy water. You might have tide going one way, wind going another, and then depending on the angle of the sun, it can be very tough to read the direction a fish is facing, or if it's moving slowly, frankly, what direction it's moving, multiplied by the complexity the boat could be moving. So if you do have a guide really on it, spotting for you at that very moment, ask him which side of the fish. Like that can be a really common mistake people make. So permit, play to win, go tight. If we really want that fly to hit and then just fall down, putting just a little tension on it for the strip. Bonefish depends on how deep the water is. In deep water, they're a little less spooky. You can play a little bit closer. If the fish is on a pretty good path of travel, I might be out there as far as 10 or 12 feet if it's on a distinct path of travel. If fish are twisting, wandering, wallowing, feeding, I'm just going within a few feet of the fish. I might be anywhere from 24 to 48 inches, but it's going to be relatively tight. So that'd be bonefish. Tarpon, you generally want a big lead. You want to get that. If it's a traveling tarpon that's really moving clean, we might be out there 15, 20 feet in front of the fish, casting beyond saltwater fish can be a little bit dangerous. But if it's on a long lead, when I say dangerous, if a fly swims at a saltwater fish, they don't care how small it is. If it comes at them, they can often spook, even if the fly is like, you know, tiny in comparison to the size of the fish. This fly is swimming at a fish. That fish recognizes it as a threat to it or a predator. So, tarpon, long cast out in front. If it's a clean traveling direction, like some type of migratory or daisy chaining type fish, then that way, if the fish veers away, you're still in the game. If the fish veers to you, you can speed it up, and that's perfect because we want that fish to peel off and follow the fly. So if the fly's here, I mean, tarpon especially, we want this fly swimming dead away from the tarpon. We even crossways is not as good. We want that fly to swim dead away from it so that fly is spending as much time in its natural path of travel as we can. So that's going to be much, much further out. Snook, you can beat them over the head. We can get into like pelagic fish like rooster fish, jacks, dorado, stuff like that. Generally, that's like if you're throwing live sardines at dorado and rooster fish, I mean, that really becomes like they are about to eat a live sardine, and we want to it's way more challenging than it sounds like, but we want to get that live sardine like right in, or that sardine we're throwing right in the path of travel of individual jumping sardine. And that could be over, live chum where we're adding to a feeding frenzy, just trying to generate a shot near enough our boat to get it. But that could also be over individual like live bait balls, where when you see a sardine begin jumping, you want to hit that sardine with your imitation and just get it as close as you can, because jumping sardines are the telltale sign that a predator fish is underneath. So there isn't you're more looking at what the fish is doing or its behavior on that. So hopefully that was helpful. That one could, like, depending on the species, the water depth situation, etc., could go on and on and on and on. So uh yeah, let's go. We'll just keep going to the next. So uh yeah, so just returned from Ascension Bay. Great trip, but had difficulty seeing fish. Used green mirror lenses, but couldn't really see fish. Any thoughts on different lens color? Uh, it just depends on lighting. I mean, the advantage of sunglasses are all going to depend on the lighting scenario that you're in. I ran green mirrored for years. I still like them. I wear them when it's bright. Now I'm running like this violet mirror, which I'll just hold up in front of the camera, and you can see it's not very dark. And I've come to find a really light lens for me is much better. Like, I don't want a real dark lens. So you can care, like, with sunglasses, these are going to get more playing time than any rod, fly, pair of boots, or anything you have. They're $250, whatever. Like, sunglasses are literally the most important piece of flats fishing gear that you have. If I don't have good glasses, I can't see the fish. Who cares what kind of rod or fly or line or whatever I have? So I think having multiple sets of glasses is not unreasonable for flat strips, because I wear these things all year. I am not fishing today, and I probably wore them for 3 hours already today when I was outside. So, yeah, just grab another set of lenses, and if it's dark at all, the Bahio, like, and that's what I wear. That's what I really like. But yeah, that thing is really bright, so you're not going to darken any contrast. It really makes the fish pop, in my opinion. I'll wear green mirrors when it's really bright still, but that violet mirrored lens to me is the brightest and best thing that I've personally found. But yeah, invest in good glasses. There are lots of tricks to seeing fish. There are lots of tricks to seeing fish. One, you're looking for movement, and then the other thing is you're looking for, like, your perceive. Don't look at the bottom. And this isn't necessarily directed at the question. This person may be highly experienced, but they're just looking for an advantage. So this may be tips for you to have just for future reference. But you're looking, like, into the water column, but you're looking for things that are up off the water column or up off the bottom. You're not looking for fish on the bottom. So like, visually, your eye is going to eliminate sticks and things like that. One, you're looking for, like, the absence of the bottom, especially with bonefish. Like, you have to really hold still, stop moving, stop walking, and you're really looking for an absence of the bottom. I mean, it really is a mirage that kind of floats through the sand. The next tip is, if a guide spots a fish, there's a couple of different ways to handle this. Maybe you have a junior guide. When we go to Ascension Bay, Mexico, that's one of our favorite and best trips. It's great because you're going to see all the species in a given week. When you first, like, your first experience in salt, like seeing fish, I read this in Lefty Kray's book, and it stuck with me. I mean, it's an old book. I can't remember what year Lefty wrote it, but it was like, seeing the fish gives you a profound advantage. So even if you miss opportunities a couple of times on your first, day or week of fishing, and just saying, like, holding strong, going, I'm not going to cast until I see my own fish, instead of responding to the guide who says 30 feet, 11 o'clock. And then you're like, oh, 30 feet, 11 o'clock. And eventually you'll be looking there and you won't see anything. You'll think the guide's blind or bluffing or whatever, and then you'll strip it through that area. Boom, an invisible fish bites your line and then peels off at a Mach 5, and you're like, what the hell just happened? uh, Hopefully some of you get a kick out of that because you've experienced it. But what Lefty's advice was, don't cast until you see the fish, and then you make the cast on your terms and you can see it. I think that's a very good piece of advice as you're getting into this. The other tip is, two more tips on this: have the guide point the rod, or you point your rod, and ask the guide to move the rod around until it's pointed at the fish. And then you'll lock in and you'll be able to see the fish much better using, a 9-foot pointer. Then you see the fish, then you make your shot. Things are happening. Typically, a good opportunity happens a little slower than you feel like it does based on the urgency. Like, it generally happens a little slower. There's a lot of panic that people feel and takes place. If it wasn't meant to be, it wasn't meant to be. Like you need to be expedient and efficient, but don't hurry. That would be like you just need to be efficient motions. Um, it's much faster, more efficient to make one well thought out cast than three bad ones and then one that hits the spot. So the other one is with your eyes. So let's just say I'm looking, you can put your hands here to backlight your lenses. Two, you can pull your buff over. If I had my sunglasses on like this, pulling your buff over or your face mask over to black out the back so that you're not getting any light coming off the back of your lens. That is a really big advantage too. But once you do that, then if you start by looking in the water at say 10 feet away, and then you scan out like sonar, and then if you don't see it, if the guide's pointing, and you have to ask your guide to point, a lot of times the guides will just verbally give you directions. You have to ask the guide to point. Like just make sure you say, "Hey, could you please point?" And then point your finger out, and then he might even move your hand around until you're at it. Start with your eyes close and work out. Start with your eyes close and work out and do that several times. If your eyes are just darting around all over the place, you're going to wind up lost and you're going to see a lot less fish, but start close and then scan out. So hopefully those tips are related to that question, are helpful. So Jim Sprong, really good question. If you're an intermediate caster, is there a particular location of species to fish for that you would recommend as a first trip? I think anything in, you know, I think anything in Ascension Bay is great with an emphasis on bonefish. And then if the tides are good, if the guides say tides are good for snook, snook are like the feel good fish. And I'll let me grab a picture of a snook just because I think that's kind of fun if people um, haven't seen snook or understand what I'm describing. So let me grab that and I'll show you a picture of a snook. There's a picture of a snook from Ascension Bay. Snook are like the ultimate feel good fish. I mean, they have that huge mouth. They're good biters. Uh, they they're generally very aggressive. If you make the shot, they play fair. I mean, you get a really good return on investment for like casting on snook. So I think snook are really great in that sense. So Ascension Bay has snook. Ascension Bay's bonefish are very cooperative. You can walk for them or fish them from the boat. So I think Ascension Bay is like a really natural choice. Especially, we'll get to some of this stuff later. Christmas Island, and just with an emphasis on bonefish, but that's going to be really singular species in Christmas Island. And then in Ascension Bay, if you just as long as you stay away from permit and tarpon are like by guide's invitation or suggestion. If the guide suggests tarpon, they probably have a pretty good idea they can get you into tarpon. But in Ascension Bay, I would say bonefish priority, request to get out of the boat and walk with your guide for bonefish. I think that's a really great way to learn saltwater fishing, spot some of your own fish, make some of your own decisions, and enjoy being standing in saltwater. To me, that's an excellent trip. But like you want to control it a little bit. The hosts are great on these trips to lean on because the host will counsel you to and pair you up with another boatmate or an angler that's interested in the same thing. Uh, if you've fascinated with if you're fascinated with one tarpon, like you're interested in tarpon and getting lots of shots, don't go to Florida. That's my opinion. I've been to Florida several times. I would put Campeche, Mexico at the top of your list if you have an emphasis on tarpon and you want a simple gear set where it's like a 9 weight rod with a floating line and a box full of flies that are really simple for one species. Campeche, Tarpon Town of Campeche is great beginner level tarpon fishing. And it's one species, so you're learning how to fish that species for a week. Ascension Bay, there's a little bit more of a required gear set between bonefish, snook, permit, barracuda. You're probably going to want at least two rods, probably three set up at all times for the different species. So if you don't want to invest a pile in gear, you want a really good trip. Like Campeche is like excellent. And if you're interested in like world history and things too, the city of Campeche is spectacular. I mean, that's one of my highlights of going to Campeche was just visiting the city of Campeche, and then the Mayan ruins were like a really great add-on. Same day of fishing, didn't have to extend any time on the trip for me. It was great. And then we talked about snook. I think snook in Ascension Bay, if there's a guide's invitation to fish snook, like you jump on that because they're sensitive to tides and they're just like they're big dumb thug. I mean, you smack this fly in front of them, give it two strips. I mean, 9 times out of 10, I feel like the snook eat. That's called a nyaka, but that would be an example of a bait fish style fly for snook. They don't eat typically crabs and shrimp as well, but they like something meaty and bait fish. Uh, yeah, next one. Do I use different knots for saltwater fishing? Stephanie asked. Yeah, slightly. Like you could get away with a clinch knot and some of the splice knots that we'd use for conventional fishing. But when it comes to some of the specialty leaders, saltwater fish have different demands as far as tippet strength and tippet type. So, a fish like a snook that I just showed you, for instance, or a tarpon, and naturally, there's other critters that have very aggressive teeth, maybe a lemon shark. That's something, a small lemon shark would be something that we would cast at pretty frequently, would be um, an example. We might not target lemon sharks, but if a 3 or 4 footer swims by, you're all casting at them. So you want to have something or the ability to have some type of leader material that will withstand um, the abrasion resist or have some abrasion resistance to withstand punishment from these toothy critters. So this is a piece of 40-pound test. This is very common. We call this shock tippet. You can see the name shock on there. And shock tippet is a very deceiving term. A lot of people think it has a high level of stretchiness to it, like it's going to be a shock absorber. That's not entirely true. We generally will run this depending on the species or the demands. We'll take a piece of 40-pound, 60-pound, or 80-pound, and this might be the piece that's on the terminal end that's tied to my fly. And I'll show you one of the knots that were required. So the knots will be dictated most often by the strength of the line, and I will show you one knot that would be a common one that we would want to learn for most saltwater fishing applications. Well, I'll show you a couple of real quick. Let's just say the first is a perfection loop, and this is going to come in really handy for all sorts of different connections. And so I'll just tie a perfection loop. I won't bore you with the painful details, but being able to tie a really good perfection loop so that I can take this big, heavy 40-pound, 60-pound, 80-pound test and actually connect it to the end of my fly line. Maybe I do a loop to loop connection in the leader. There are lots of practical applications for perfection loop. Perfection loops work really well on pound test 30 and up. Under 30, they don't tend to grab as well. The next one is if we're going to fish for a snook or a tarpon, and we're going to tie on with this heavy line, the knots get really, really ugly when we tie on a fly with if we're or a clinch knot or what we call a non-slip monoloop. They get really ugly when we tie onto these flies. So we have a knot we call a Homer Rhodes double figure eight loop knot, and you can see I just made a double overhand, and I'm going to tie it. I'm going to bring it down into a figure eight. And actually, these knots aren't all that hard. You just want to learn them in advance, and it's a good little cocktail time at home after a hard day at work. You can sit down and tie a few of these and get to know the knot here. So I won't bother with the details, but it's really not. They're not that challenging because the line is pretty thick. So in comparison to like your trout knots and things, and that was only half the knot. And I'll just do a single figure eight on this just for time's sake. It would only take another second to do the other one. We got to give it a kiss so we don't melt it. But then I can tie a really pretty, and I'll even trim this one, but I can tie a really pretty loop knot that allows that fly to move on this stiff line. And so you can see it hinges and the fly has some action. And I think that when we tie these loop knots, the fish hook up better because as the fish grabs it, it can turn away and then my hook can come back into the fish. So there are a couple of knots. I'd say perfection loop, Homer Rhodes loop knot, and a non-slip mono loop would be kind of the bare essentials. And again, we're tying with pretty heavy lines. So honestly, it's much easier to learn than something on 6X. It's pretty easy to handle and very easy to see. So those would be knots. There's a couple of others, like a double uni knot would be like, I use that knot a lot. It's really, really easy. But I'll list the on the blog article. In the blog article, don't look for anything flashy and fancy. It's going to be very short. I'll list like the essential knots. Like I'll just make a list, and there's lots of good resources. I have a few videos on how to do those uh, that you would need for saltwater fishing. And I think it's important that you learn some of these knots before you go. Just as kind of like a pro tip from an experienced angler and travel host on these trips. Don't bog your guide down tying all your knots. Let your guide do his job. Be thinking about the tides, thinking about your safety, thinking about where you're going to go next, and most importantly, like looking for fish. If the guide's looking here, tying your stuff all the time, you're going to see less fish. You handle your own gear, handle your own connections, handle your own fly. Let the guide stay up on the poling deck, looking for those fish, doing what they do best, and that's finding you the fish so that you can cast at it. So I could be like put like an angry rant together about people who don't learn their own knots. They spend I don't know, sometimes $10,000 on a week of fishing. It's like learn your freaking knots. Like make the like make best use of your time. Uh, okay, so the next one, are the new fly lines a real thing or a gimmick? God, that's a good question. We've been talking about just that. I think that the quality of the lines is really, really, really good. And the what the person's asking is there are fly lines that are now on the market, both Scientific Anglers and Rio. Those are the brands that we believe in. They both make really good products. I don't have a strong preference of one versus the other. I think it has more to do with like the model of the line. I'm just familiar with some Rio, some SA. I've really liked my clear fly lines. I think they're great. I don't see a disadvantage to them for me personally. For a beginner, for somebody who maybe doesn't have like when I throw a cast, I can just feel the weight of the line, and I know how much line I have out. I know where my fly is going to land. Just thousands and thousands of hours of casting flies. So the line can be clear, and I basically and now have the equivalent of say my whole thing might be leader. Like I can't see my line. I know where my fly is going. I have excellent vision for that. I just know where it's going. What I have heard from anglers and flats guides is folks that don't have as much distance control, maybe they're not seeing the fish and maybe they don't know exactly where their fly is going to land. The guides have a tough time knowing where the fly is in relation to the fish. This is my opinion. I believe if somebody's newer to saltwater fishing and they don't have a mastery of the cast, get standard floating lines. Like don't get clear lines. Get your typical, relatively visible fly lines so that 9 or 10 or 6 or whatever the leader length is. Beyond that line is where your fly is. The guide's going to be able to help you control that a little bit. I'm at the point now where for the most part, like I'm making my own decisions on when to cast, how far to cast, when to strip, when to bring it up, when to recast. It works really well for me, but I think as a beginner, I don't think that I would recommend clear lines for newer anglers. Get a little experience before you can like fish the advantage out of that. So anyway, there's my rant on clear fly lines. I think they're great. If you're going tarpon fishing in the Florida Keys, the guides are going to want them. Most everywhere else, we're going to run longer leaders when we need to have that advantage. Uh, so next question, good questions by the way, folks. Keep them coming. Uh, One opening question for you. I've been tarpon fishing twice now. My casting practice at home goes well, but when faced with a pot of tarpon, I get buck fever and start flailing away. Ken, you and everybody else. Sounds like a common theme. I would say, like in those situations, it's happening, quickly. The guide's going to put a bunch of pressure on you, and it might not even be the guide shouting. You're just going to feel a high level of indirect pressure. First one is take a deep breath and then think through. Like there's be like a dichotomy of decisions, right? So it's going to be like binary. It's going to be one or the other. And the first one is are you looking at backhand or forehand? Like that would be like first question, because if you've got a 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock shot, you're a right hander on the deck, and you swing all the way over and try to forehand a 2 o'clock shot without thinking about it, you're possibly hitting the guide on the poling deck, or the pole itself, depending on the angle of that pole. And I've done that 100 times. I mean, it happens. So and then you're thinking, okay, what's my lead? Is it a cross moving fish? Is it a pod moving at me? If it's a pod moving at you, you've got, X amount of time that you need to make that shot. You just got to get it in front of them, hopefully with like a feeding angle where that fly is swimming parallel direction of the pod. If it's a cross moving pod, one good question for your guide is, a lot of guides don't want you shooting at the lead fish in Florida, because if the lead fish is like the watchdog, if you spook the lead fish, the whole pod blows up. But if something appears, later in the pod, like fish number two, three, four, five, whatever it is, a lot of times those fish will be much more tolerant, because if the lead fish didn't get spooked, it must be okay. Maybe we're in a feeding frenzy now. So I would ask my guide, like, do you want me shooting at the lead fish? Lead fish or no? If he says lead fish, get it in front of him, go for it, lead out in front of him. Uh, but if you eliminate that backhand forehand decision, I see like the most just complete utter failures like at that juncture right there. So to answer your question simply, take a deep breath, forehand, backhand. Am I shooting for the lead fish or not? Like in Florida, that would be a very viable question there. So uh, yeah, very good question. Uh, this question is about Campeche. Looks like Campeche might be a little better later in the year, later trips in the near future. There might be some, planning flats trips. Like we have done it all, everything from, uh, you know, January. We've done some things in December, but December, a lot of people are booked up. It seems like with family stuff, those trips often don't fill. We've done everything from January all the way through June. I think we've done a couple of trips even in July and August. I've been to Belize in August. The winter time, let's just say January, February, say January, February. Generally speaking, you might have a little bit more cloudy weather and it might be a little bit cooler, but you'll generally, this is just general rule of like that tropical band, tropical being anywhere from 23.5 degrees north on south. Uh, you'll have maybe a little bit more cloudy weather. It might be a little bit cooler, but you generally won't get the big tropical storms and risk of tropical storm, which generally occurs later, closer to June. So we've done a whole bunch of different trips, and I'll tell you, like when you feel like traveling, go travel. There are pros and cons to all times of the year. Uh, Campeche, May would typically be considered like really good peak season. But I think if you go and look at the rain, like the rain and weather charts, you generally get a little bit more rain, and that will come in the form of like a couple of major fronts that come in. So I think it's six one way, half a dozen the other. I don't have like a formula about planning those trips. There are pros and cons to everything. In regarding to flats trip planning. If you live in the northern hemisphere, we're at 47 degrees north. We're pretty high latitude here. Getting out of here in January, February looks pretty good to me. So January, February is great. May would be considered a peak time, but you might have at greater risk of a couple of storm events. The harbor can get closed down. We ran the last trip. I think we ran there in May. They were closed part of the week because of storms, and they had to find some kind of Plan B stuff. So there's pros and cons. As you get later, closer to summer, the storms get bigger. But when the weather's nice, it's nice. But just know that that is a con going into that. So, uh, another question. Some trips never make it on the website. That's true with Reds. If we've got a group that rebooks, a lot of times there's no point in us putting it out. And then if we just have a spot or two to fill, it's hardly worth putting them out. But yeah, and it is good. You know, they're generally not invitation only unless trips won't be invitation only unless it's like almost all the way full, and then it's hardly worth putting it out there. For us. But like I said, if they rebook or it's a group that always books together, we'll do that. Very good question. Yeah, trip or this question says I'm off to the Ascension in February. Can't take them as a carry-on. Yeah, I didn't bring up my big suitcase. It's a really good question. Mexico has just absolutely such wonderful fishing. I have had nothing but wonderful experiences in Mexico. Wonderful destination. They have, I mean, Mexico's a huge country, massive amounts of coastline, both Pacific and Atlantic. One funny thing about Mexico is you can carry on rods, reasonable sized pliers, fly lines, reels, all that kind of stuff going into Mexico. You can carry them on going in, but you can't carry them on going out. So, a couple of tips for you is carry if you want to like pack ultralight and carry on going in. That's great. I think that's a great way to travel. The U.S. We have no issues carrying on. I mean, just read the TSA rules. Pliers that are sub, I think 5.5 inches. Or my pliers, I think, are 5.5 inches, which they're totally good to carry on. Flies, lines, rods, reels, no problem. Coming out of Mexico, you want to have a. I have a piece of luggage that's made by Fish Pond, and I can actually fit all of my rods in that suitcase, and I can just take my rod tube. If it's a bulk travel tube, also made by Fish Pond, it's called the Jackalope. What the heck? I'll show you this stuff. It's a good question. Um, let's uh, let's jump. I'll just jump it over and show it to you. You don't have to buy the same exact thing as me. Oh, that's the carry-on one there. But this bag supports a full length rod tube in the bottom. It's you can put that tube. It's designed to put that tube inside there, so I could carry on if I felt more comfortable going in and then going home. I can put that in there. You could just look at specs for other suitcases too. Although I would love to sell you one of these. They're a great suitcase. It's been bulletproof for me. But that's one way that you can, you know, you get around that, carrying on. So going out of Mexico. So anyway, but there's a bunch of other stuff too. I won't go on and on about it, but yeah, carry on going in if you want, and then use some type of bag like that going out. Good question. Uh, Another Ascension, lots of Ascension Bay questions today. There are lots of folks that go to Ascension Bay. I mean, it's a relatively easy trip to do. Question is like boots or booties, and I actually brought a couple pairs in here. These ones are minis. These are my wives, but they were the ones sitting next to my sneakers this morning when I came to go. So that's a booty. Booties are designed for soft bottoms with minimal rock and coral, and this part zips up around your ankle to keep mud and soft debris and small materials out. And they're flexible. You can wear them. They have a very, unaggressive tread pattern. So you can wear these in the boat and fly line won't get caught up. They're very slick so that fly line won't get caught on there. If if the opportunity that presents itself is better out of the boat, it's very easy to slip into the water in these nice, comfortable booties and do that. Um, this is like more of a boot style. This is called a flat sneaker. This is more for all day wading, coral, things like that. Not as good in the soft bottoms because whether it's clay or sand or soft materials, will get impacted into all of the laces in here. Then they're very messy getting back in the boat. They're harder to wash off. And then you've got a bunch of little seashells and sand and junk in the boat. They're not nearly as good. So in Ascension, you definitely want like a zip it style booty, and I wouldn't hesitate. I mean, if there was better ways to do it, I would tell you. Like you could wear a pair of old high top sneakers, then give them to the guides at the end of the week. I mean, that's a possibility if you don't want to buy a set of shoes specifically for 1 week. But I want to say these are like $100, and you're going to put a lot of hours on them. I mean, even the first week that you buy them to have a better product and material for your fishing trip. So I think they're a wise purchase, even if it's just for 1 week of fishing. Okay, another question: is a DJI Mini 4 drone okay to take along? Definitely not to Cuba, but I think in Mexico you are totally good to go there. So no issues. I don't think there's any issues. You'd have to read on the website. That's one I'll let you confirm that. I won't speak to that, but definitely don't take it to Cuba. They don't like it. You flying drones around there. These are Bahio sunglasses. Yep. So those are Bahios. Next question is any tips for DIY fishing on Long Island, Bahamas? Number one tip is if you're seeing your own fish, get those Bahio sunglasses. That would be my number one tip. I've not been to Long Island, so I can't really speak to that. But Generally speaking, for like DIY fishing, seeing and finding fish is the number one key. Ask some locals. I think it would be a great way to do it. Even if those locals aren't fishing guides, they, would ask them where the fly fishermen usually go. I mean, that's like a really they're all fly fishing, or all the fly fishermen are after. All the DIY guys in Bahamas are going to be after bonefish. Ask them where the fly fishermen go. Ask at the local bar where the fly fishermen go. You'd be surprised how helpful that might be. Uh, Next question. We just got a couple left. We're approaching an hour, so that's about right, you guys. So, any pro tips for Christmas Island? Adrian's going in October. I've got tons of tips for Christmas Island. In fact, I'll just share this on the blog. Um, I've put up a couple of, I'll just jump over. To this blog. Let me go grab it real quick. If I look a little spacey, I'm just going to grab um, a blog article and then share it with you. And so I'll share a couple of things. So I'll even just chat it in here. So anybody going to Christmas Island, um, you should click that article. That's a really, really well done. And I can say that because I put a lot of time into it. And I've had many other guides, outfitters, and lodges comment on what a great article it was. The other one is I did a couple of episodes on YouTube where it was just like me fishing with a head cam, and I would catch fish, have success, or make a mistake, and I would just video document the whole thing. And those episodes have been, really, really well received by folks going. So go to our YouTube channel and just search for Christmas Island. And there's episodes 1 and 2, and that's from a recent trip. And I would throw them up on your television. They're 45 minutes long, all filmed in 4K. But that is literally the best I can do to try to help people have more success in Christmas Island. Is that article there? And then those 2 episodes. I cannot do more to help you in Christmas Island. So I, I would I would go through those articles as well. Opinion for a 6 weight for bonefish in the Bahamas. I think sixes for bones work fine in optimal conditions where we've got relatively short casts. We've got very, very small flies. I mean, some could even say that a 6 weight would be superior because of its lightweight delivery and things. But you put a 10-mile-an-hour wind, which isn't even that much of a wind, and a set of bead chain eyes, something like this. Just this is a bonefish fly. So that's called a bonefish bug. It's got bead chain eyes. It's got a piece of rabbit strip. You take a 6 weight rod, which I can't remember how many grains the line is going to be on a 6 weight, but a lot of it's about the grain, the mass of the line. What can the line do in the wind? The physical nature of the line's ability to catapult and turn over a fly. What can it do in the wind? This fly, saturated, holds water, it's got a little weight. Can that 6 weight line propel it and turn it over in a 10-mile-an-hour wind? That gets very, very challenging, especially now we're asking you to cast, say, 50 feet, accurately. So 6 weight lines are going to get blown around more. They're going to have more wind shear and things like that. 6 weights are much more fragile. I don't think I would ever buy a 6 weight for a bonefish trip. Period. I mean, I will throw an 8. I mean, the more saltwater fishing I've done, the more I club up to the next rod weight. I mean, I've seen so many rods break. I've seen so many casts just get knocked off track in the wind. I've seen so many casts come up just a little bit short. I would rather carry a little bit bigger gun and rein it in a little bit. I mean, I'll fish 12 weights in Baja most of the time. I'll fish 8 almost exclusively for bones. I don't even own a 7 weight saltwater rod. I think if you like a 7 weight for salt, go for it. That's just not my style. I would rather have a rod that is durable, it's tough, it's going to make it through a tough week of fishing, and it's going to do the really tough tasks that I ask. I'm not saltwater fishing to get a little wiggle in the rod. I'm saltwater fishing because the excitement of making that cast and that tug on the strip set gets my heart pumping. And I don't need a lighter rod to get that enjoyment out of it. I want the heaviest rod that will still be, offer just enough finesse to get the job done. So I'm leaning towards 8s, exclusively. And the Bahamas have some huge bonefish. mean, the idea of a 10-pound bone in the Bahamas isn't ludicrous. So it's a good question. I'm glad I have a strong opinion on it, so I can be helpful. Yeah, are they ever going to grade the road to Punta Allen? They grade the road to Punta Allen all the time, and then a storm comes in and puts a bunch of water on the road, and that water finds a sinkhole, and pretty soon it's littered with potholes again. I've seen that road in beautiful condition, and I have seen it in absolute crap condition. One development, though, I'm telling you, like to listen up if you're going to Ascension Bay, is there is a flight into Tulum now, and that saves you a couple of hours on pavement and softens up the drive. It also gets in typically if you're coming from the States, which, we got a couple of people internationally, UK guests and things like that are watching here, but it gets you in earlier. So we can get into Tulum at say 4:20 in the afternoon. I think my flight down there in March lands at like 4:19 p.m. Go through customs real quick. Eric and the boys did that here recently, just a couple weeks ago. Said the customs at Tulum was a snap. You're on the road before 5, 2 hours, 2.5 tops down to the lodge. You're having dinner at the lodge that night upon arrival. So we're trying to get most of our guests moved over to the Tulum airport. If you don't, you don't. That's a more recent development. But then it also shortens up any drive time that you have coming out as well by about close to 2 hours. So uh, anyway, yeah, we'll take one more question. If another one pops in, no problem. But we're looking for a fly list for Campeche. Let me jump over to the web. In fact, I'll just walk you through that for like, we still got people watching. Uh, let's go ahead and jump over and let's share uh, flies on the website here. And you can come down and you can come to assortments and look at our destination packages right here, and we tune these up pretty frequently and ignore the prices. The prices can be crazy. It's really not $1,500 to get Ascension based flies. That's a little app glitch. That's if you bought every single possible size and color off our list. But Campeche, we can look here. There's shop manager Bob with a nice tarpon from Campeche. We've got the smelling salt, orange and tan, smelling salt, black and purple. You're seeing a trend. Smelling salt, black and red, millhouse tarpon shrimp, and on and on. Great flies for Campeche. You could add this whole thing to your cart, or you could say, hey, I've already got some Klausers. This fly's ugly. I don't want that one. Or, hey, that I don't want that, but I want 4 of the salty mullet because Joe said that's absolutely kick ass. And so you can make your own fly list basically, and then just add it and it'll all go in your cart. So there you go. That's your fly list. And I'll just share that right now. So for everybody listening going to Campeche, let me just put that right here, right in the chat window. And you could see the chat window though. There. Uh, okay. Let's I got one little like comment here. Hey, thanks for the nice thank you for all the nice comments, by the way. Is really really appreciated. I love what I get to do here at Reds, helping you guys. So we appreciate it. I think that the question here from Ocean Rider 12 is just about bonefish casting. Do you have any tips for bonefish casting? The number one like thing I can say just about becoming a good saltwater caster in general is learning how to throw, like, I don't care if it's with your trout rod or a saltwater rod, like really learning how to throw like good aerodynamic loops. And I'm gonna actually just gonna draw a diagram, and I'm gonna show you like a good loop and like a not good loop. Um, and learning how to tighten loops up. And so this has got a very sharp point to it. This is the top leg of the loop here. That's your fly right there, getting a free ride. There's a huge difference in just throwing or attempting to throw with power or even a double haul. You could double haul all you want and put as much power into this as you possibly want. It's not going anywhere in a wind. You learn to put a sharp point on your loop. And I don't care if you double haul or not. You don't have to double haul. Learning to get the rod tight behind you, power throw through and throw a really good loop with a very sharp leading edge. That will cut through the wind. That will deliver a fly in any condition. And so there isn't a lot of like magic snake oil to the casting. Yeah, we want to be able to see the fish, want to be able to know how far away from a cat and do it. Most people can do everything except make the cast. And I can speak just very candidly and critically here. Like the number of casters we see, like even on these saltwater trips, like if I were to take 10 guests on these saltwater trips and line them up, I'd say I might have like two or three like really good casters out of 10. And that isn't to say like everybody should do these trips. Everybody should go. Everybody should participate. Like being a good caster is like it's pretty unique. Like, and I don't think you have to like do a lot of saltwater fishing to do it. I think you can practice it in your yard and look at your cast critically on how tight of a loop you can throw. If you learn to throw your 9 foot 5 weight rod 90 feet, like, and that's a hard thing to do. Like, and I mean with a measuring tape, like not like, oh, I have 90 feet of line. No, usually that goes like 65 feet for most people when they think they threw a 90-foot cast. You learn to throw a 9 foot 5 weight like 80, 90 feet, let's just say 80 feet to keep it realistic. You're going to have a very powerful, sharp loop in your saltwater cast. Like really working on that dry fly cast or really working at getting distance out of your. I don't care if you practice with your saltwater gear. I don't even care if you own saltwater gear, learning to throw a loop with a sharp leading edge. I don't even care if you double haul. You probably will need to really get that loop, tight with your heavier rod, say 9 weight on up. But really work on sharp loops. Really look at your cast critically. Practice in the yard. Uh, work on keeping your elbow really tight. Any of this kind of junk. I can't do seminars every single day on casting or lessons, but I do want to work with more people on learning how to keep their elbows tight so that we can learn how to throw those loops, the sharp leading edges that are pointy, that deliver a laser beam out to whatever distance we need to be throwing. Because casting, raw casting, is the number one answer I get every single time when I ask international fly fishing or saltwater guides. The number one answer I get is, what can we do better? Like, how do we prepare anglers better? Is better casting, better distance casting, more power, better line speed, get folks casting better. So practice, practice, practice. Look at your cast critically, measure your cast, learn to shoot a tremendous amount of line so that you could take two false casts and then send it. So, one, two, whoom, and that thing is out there and it lands like it's a frozen rope or a laser beam right out there on the line. But I don't think people practice nearly enough. I think that they lie to themselves while they're casting. I think they pretend their cast is better than it is. And I also think casting in a group, if you get together with two or three people, hopefully one of them is a really, really, really good caster, and then that way you have a benchmark of which to cast, with, and play a little casting games, have a little fun, come to our seminars. Like, I mean, get exposure to what a really good caster that can generate a tremendous amount of line speed with low input, meaning like small number of false casts, massive distance and line speed. And I think people would be really shocked at how the difference in like just the proficiency of energy and speed of a caster like, myself or some of the other casters we have on staff here, in what a caster who may have fished a long time, or they're the best caster in their group, or their guides have told them, oh, Frank, you're a great caster. And then you toe the line, you know next to a couple of other people that really have worked on their cast for a lot of years. I think you'd be amazed at the fall off in accuracy and distance in that. And I think uh, more people need to work on their casting prior to that. So I would say, like, back to bonefish casting, like throwing really tight, sharp leading edge loops, really ones that will cut the wind in any condition, whether it's a backhand shot into the wind, tailwind, wind left to right, right to left, whatever. Those sharp leading edge loops are going to deliver that fly as close to the fish as you possibly can. That's going to increase your odds with bonefish every single time. Uh, yeah, windy conditions. Yeah, casting in windy conditions. So I kind of outlined a couple of those right now, but One of the casts that we see people lack is a really, really good backhand cast. And I can still remember being like completely humiliated in casting competition on when the challenge was throwing a backhand cast, and there were like some really well trained casters there. I've always been able to do fairly well on the forehand cast and hang with most people, but the backhand cast is one of the most challenging casts that you can possibly learn. And what a lot of people mistake is they think backhanding and they have like this idea of a tennis stroke. And that's not necessarily good form, because a backhand cast is going to be, as a righty, it's going to be anything when I have a right to left wind. So if I'm casting to you and I have a right to left wind that's blowing into my hand like so, and I try bringing it back on the right side of my body, that fly is going to blow. Not only is it going to blow into my body, that fly is going to likely snag my rod tip, and also, the way the loop is typically structured, it's going to blow slack into my loop. So all sorts of bad stuff happens as a righty, and I've got a right to left wind. I'm blowing in. I've lost power and energy, and now my cast fumbles. If I can turn my body around and I can fire this direction, and I will turn my entire posture rather than trying to cast cack-handed or backhand swing like that. I'd like to say there's no such thing as a good backhand cast. I mean, because people just do it incorrectly. They swing versus driving the rod the way that $1,000 graphite lever was intended to be driven. And I physically turn and I throw my forward loop here. I can then keep my reel. I brought this out for a prop. I should use it. My reel is faced this way. My line, my rod, or my guides and everything are lined up. And then as I drive back, I'm not leading with the back of my hand. I am actually driving here. And if I had full guide set here and I'm casting toward the camera, I can throw like so. And now that line is going to shoot out those guides into my back, what would be my back shot, with very, very little resistance. And so by turning my posture here and shooting it that way, I can shoot tremendous distance. That's for a right to left wind. That's a very, very common problem. I see that a ton in casters on salt trips. And so that's how I deal with that. That's also how I typically deal with a tailwind. So a tailwind is, the guides will usually set you up with a tailwind, but a tailwind can be tough because if I throw my back cast up and that wind compresses it, now I'm just casting against slack line. And now I hook myself in my head, my back, whatever. Everybody who's ever salt fished has done it. But when I cast and I turn into a back cast, I can actually aim and cast down because I'm stronger like this. If the wind is blowing in my face like this, I could power down low into the wind. And then my back cast, I can shove it high and let the wind then sort it out. So with a tailwind, if I need to make a long, powerful shot really fast, I will generally throw a back shot when I have tailwinds. There's different types of casts that they mentioned, like a Belgian cast. Yes, Belgian cast, great. That's just basically I'm running in a circle under constant pressure. Generally, I will do that in a big double haul cycle where my rod never stops moving and I'm throwing it and I'm keeping that line tight the entire time. That's very advanced. And I don't have a rigid stop and start, because when I stop, I've given that wind a moment of limbo to do whatever the heck it wants with my line, and then I wind up with a mess. So the Belgian style double haul salt is going to be under constant pressure. It's going to be like an engine with a couple of pistons, and that thing's going to be moving the entire time. I cannot afford to let my fly go slack for even a moment, because that wind's going to steer it off course, and then I'm going to miss my shot, whatever desired species I have down there. So the Belgian, yes, but you're going to probably do that in longer casting situations with the double haul, is my opinion. You can do it off the deck of the boat, um, but sidearm or keeping your cast low is going to be the number one thing that we're going to try to do. And I almost hate to use the term sidearm. Sidearm, people start going sidearm and their elbow gets loose and they start doing something that looks like this. My sidearm cast, this would be my traditional cast. I would love to throw everything right over the top, and I will go way back with my rod so that I can pull the line like this. And when I teach this, I talk about it being kind of a stabbing mechanism, and I can stab forward. And my rod can lay this flat because my initial rod movement is just tightening up the line. My power stroke starts here, and by the time I come through, my cast will actually be very, very low and compact because I'm going to have so much bend in this rod. My preferred cast is generally going to be overhand like this. That is the straightest, truest, most powerful cast. And the fly will actually rip right by my head like this. That loop will be so low and tight and almost underslung because I can get that rod. My 9 foot rod will really be about a 4.5 or 5 foot rod by the time that it's bent double and comes by me under a full, if it's a full load or a full, power cast. So I almost hate to use sidearm because people tend to start to swing, but I'm basically going to take that same power shot, and all I'm going to do is tip. A lot of times I will tip my body like this so that I still can keep my thumb over my shoulder and over my bicep. I want a very tight casting stroke, and I will lower my rod out to the side, but I'm basically just canting it, just a little bit. I want to make sure that it may sound really simple in here. If we were to go out to the casting course, a lot of people would start this swinging fashion rather than this stabbing and driving, fashion right there. So yes, you're going to try to get your loops low. I mean, ideally, flies coming by head high, and it's very, very low and fast. The other concept, as we're talking about casting, let me grab a piece of scratch paper here, and I'm going to draw a little diagram. And I could still remember kind of seeing this diagram somewhere when I was casting, and it was almost like it was almost one of those epiphany moments in casting. And I'm gonna just draw this here. It's just a stick guy, but what a lot of people don't understand when we start to make these long distance casts is that your baseline loop, and this is this could be the forward cast, the back cast, I don't care which, but that baseline loop, that bottom leg of the loop, okay, that's again top leg, bottom leg. That bottom leg of the loop is perfectly flat. Okay. It has to be perfectly flat. If we introduce an arcing motion to the cast, like so, and let's just say the rod stops, here to here. If we introduce an arcing motion to the, I'm just going to draw this one more time with that arc. If our rod arcs, meaning it moves on a radius, like you see this pen doing, our cast does the same thing. And we no longer have that flat baseline of the bottom leg. Your back cast all the way to your forward cast has to be on the exact baseline for efficiency. If it is not, if your rod arcs and dips above that baseline, you're going to be now sending these high, lame trajectories, loose open loops, tailing loops, all sorts of bad stuff happens. So when we start doing that sidearm stuff, it is really critical that you understand that the level of that rod tip, like you see my finger doing here, controls the bottom leg baseline of that loop. And too many people, they just start waving and arcing when they start to attempt to do that. So plan A is driving straight overhand with extremely tight loops that also come very low by your head, almost that underslung style. The loop is so tight, it's almost underslung. And just because it's being vertical doesn't mean it's high. Again, my rod is half the functional length because it's loaded so heavy when it comes by. But start there, work sidearm, keep that bottom leg of your loop very, very tight. Video yourself. I mean, everybody has a smartphone capable of slow motion. Set it on the deck, set it on the porch, have somebody film you, put it on a tripod. If you really want to make the most out of these big investments in your salt trips, like, practice goes a long ways so that you can just show up, walk up, that fly's going where you tell it to go most every time. So, uh, yeah, good question on how we pivot, for various wins. So I hope that, yes, that did cover all the details within the question there. Uh, yeah. So Marius asked, Did you discuss distance? I feel ridiculous that people claim you need to throw an 80-foot cast the wind. No, cast get embellished for like every hour you fly. People add like 10 feet to the distance they said they had to cast. So if you fly 5 hours, people add 50 feet to the distance. That's like the equivalent. The further you fly, the more remote the destination, the harder it must have been, and so on and so forth. So, yeah, you fly 5 hours, most people add 50 feet. So if it's 80 feet, they cast at about 30, Marius. That's about what happens. No, it is a ridiculous concept that you have to cast 80. Is it helpful to cast 80? Yes, absolutely, because that means your 30 and 40 footers are getting there faster and more accurate if you have the ability to reach out there and cast for distance. It means we did talk about this, but maximizing efficiency with whatever rod you have. I don't care if it's a 5 weight. If you can cast a 5 weight 90 feet, it means you have a mastery of that sharp leading edge loop concept, and you're going to be able to get to your 30 feet, 40 feet. You're going to be able to jam flies under mangroves or cast into the teeth of a 20-mile-an-hour wind, which a 20-mile-an-hour wind is not uncommon out there on the exposed, flats. So, yeah, it's super helpful. Like, I would make that a baseline to just say, hey, I would like to be able, I'm going to make it a goal. It might not happen this year, maybe not next year. And I'm still going to go on all these great trips. But if everybody made it a goal to try to get a sharp cast at 80 feet, oh my gosh, like all this free time you have in the off season, like leave your rod strung up in the laundry room and cast a couple times a week. I don't care if it's your salt rod. I don't even care if you even own a saltwater rod at this point. Make it your 5 weight, make it your 6 weight. M- Master the geometry or the architecture of the cast, and everything will get easier. The double haul will get easier because the rod will be half loaded already. Like everything gets easier. So, no, it is ridiculous to say that you have to be able to cast 80 feet. That's absurd. You do need to be able to cast like 30 and 40, 50 feet would be great on demand, seeing fish. There's lots of little helpful things we find in hosting, all these dozens and dozens of trips that we do. People with good fishing instinct are always going to succeed. They're going to make those shots, very close. They're going to be good line managers, good line handlers. As I discussed earlier, they're going to be good at they're going to be good at their knots. So they're making more efficient use of the guide's time, etc. So good fishermen are always going to succeed, but it is helpful to be able to cast far. But that is an absurd statement that says you need to be able to cast 80 feet. Uh, do I opt for off the shelf leaders? Do you just tie maybe two or three lengths of line for 9 to 12 feet of fluorocarbon? No, I buy everything tapered off the shelf for my permit, my bonefish, and some of my other flat species. If I were going, striper fishing, I'm probably just buying some striper leaders. I like knotless. They seize up and hang up less in the air. Uh, than say a knotted leader. I am not going to taper down a permit leader from, a 40-pound butt to 16-pound terminal end. No way am I having knots in there. Every knot's a weak point. I don't care how good the knot is. It's not 100% strength. And then you multiply that over the course of different knots. I want a traditional extruded tapered leader. Tapered leaders are cheap in the grand scheme of things. I like really nice, neat tapered leaders for anything that ends with fine tippet. I patch it up once or twice by adding tippet to it using either double uni, blood knot, triple surgeons, whatever the tippet diameter. I won't deep dive into knots, but whatever the tippet, the graduating factor of how heavy is it on one end, how light is it on the next, what's the best knot. I'll patch them on once or twice. For things like tarpon, snook, a lot of times we're using what we jokingly call a homeboy leader, and that is one single piece of 40-pound or 60-pound, 80-pound test, whatever it might be, where I've got a perfection loop on one end and my fly is simply tied on the other. So yeah, I guess you could say I do build my own leaders in that sense, but literally there's no taper if it's a strong enough material or rigid enough to catapult my fly, forward to the trout or to the fish. So uh yeah, hopefully that answers your questions. But no, I buy tapered. Uh, yeah, the next question is: it seems like most instruction today suggests gripping the rod with your thumb at the top of the cork, but in watching Jim Green vintage lessons, he was resting again, his hand resting against the reel. Good question. We'll just talk about casting distance and power here as it relates to the grip. The further up you grip, it's just like a baseball bat, golf club, tennis racket, whatever. You're going to have a little bit. I've essentially made the rod functionally shorter and more flexible by gripping up. If I'm gripping up really, really high, in fact, a couple of my rods, my Beulah rods, have a little extended grip here that I choke up onto on my 10, 11, 12 weights so that I can load the rod easier with more care and less effort for little chip shots at, say, 30, 40, 50 feet. By gripping higher, I've allowed the rod to load and flex easier, so I might actually get more line speed out of the rod at a shorter cast because I'm getting more flex in the rod. Therefore, I'm getting more pop to that little cast. The further down I grip, I've essentially made the rod longer and much stiffer because if I apply pressure on the graphite down here, it's much thicker, much heavier, and now the rod is functionally longer and much stronger. It's harder to load the rod, but I'm going to be getting more power. So this would be like my ultimate, like I'll grip down with my pinky finger up. I don't have to do that with most modern, really high performance graphite rods and lines. It would be very, very rare for me to do that with a heavier salt rod. If I'm casting for super duper distance with a light rod, be it a 5 or a 6, and I need more functional power out of the rod than the rod has, and that would be like really extreme distance, I'll drop in and I'll grab down on the rod as far as I possibly can. So, and I am a thumb up caster for pretty much all of my power casting for saltwater. I mean, there are other grips. There's like modified V grips where I'm planting the bone in my hand here underneath the pad of my index finger to where I've got a V grip like that. There's lots of different opinions on this. I'll just tell you this: the best fishermen that I have had the pleasure of spending time with, like I've guided for 20. This is my 25th season for trout. Sorry, you've heard that over and over again this year. I just think it's kind of cool that I finally get to say that, and I have very little gray hair too, so I'm one of the few. Uh, so when it comes to this grip, been over this again and again. After all the angling I've watched, anglers that I'm like, okay, I've had the pleasure of guiding unbelievably skilled anglers, super high level anglers. The thumb over index finger grip is the one I see most often in anglers that I would like to model after, partially because we can leave our thumb on top of the cork and I can handle line in a very, very quick fashion. So by having my thumb up, my thumb is not over here off to the side. I have better balance. So my thumb can still apply pressure here. I can throw line back and forth. So if I had, line, let's say I had line, I will just have to pretend. So I've got line running through here. I've got my control point. I can physically throw using these two fingers the line back and forth, and I can receive the line. I can set the hook. I can fight fish. I can spit the line back to feed line. I just have fishier control. And then if I'm going to pick up, I don't have to change my grip to make my cast. And I have experimented with that modified V grip. I think Bruce Chard is a big advocate of that. And he's an unbelievable caster and saltwater angler. I think each to their own. But when I watch like practical, real people like in the struggle trying to fish good, like that's the grip that I see by like 10x or more is thumb over index finger. So index fingers here. Do not let your index finger get up there. That is absolutely silly under any circumstance. Don't let you, your buddies, your children, or anybody fish with their index finger up in saltwater. That's just silly. There's no reason to do that. You're going to have much better line control keeping that thumb home because stuff happens fast, like kung fu fast when it comes to salt fishing. So I think that grip, without a doubt, is the most efficient and the one we see modeled in the best anglers that we see. Uh, okay. As far as I see, that's where we've got through all the questions today. So if one pops in, I'll still hit it. A couple things to know. I will list all of our hosted. I'm going to put up a blog after this. It's going to be very short, but a couple of things that I promised I would share. I'll put up on the blog afterwards. It'll be very brief. I'll also embed this video once it's done. YouTube has to process it, so you can flip it to a buddy. If you want a buddy to hear any of this, fishing partner, or anything about going, I'll put up all of our hosted saltwater dates for the upcoming year on there. Couple of links I said I would, and I will embed this video there as well. And also, if you have more questions or inquiries, you could email me at joe@redsflyshop.com. And I don't get email every single day because I might be out in the field or on the water. But I will hit you back. I will get back to you. Sometimes it takes a day or two, but I would love to help you plan any trips along with Eric or any of the guys that work here. The team in this office is going to put you on a good trip and help you do really good pre-trip planning in the process. So anyway, thanks very much. We're going to go ahead and end the stream and just look for that blog article to pop up. Thank you and good luck on your upcoming trips.